I'm looking for a solution to my existential crisis, and welcome to my suboptimal solo guide for beginners and casuals to Elite Dungeon 2 Dragonkin Laboratory using ranged. Now, I'm not that good at the game, but I've talked with a few people recently who are hesitant to give solo ED2 a try after doing it with a group of friends, so this is to show you that you can do it. In this video, I'm going to cover the 3 boss fights that you will encounter during ED2, which are Astellarn, Verak Lith, and the Blackstone Dragon. The hardest of the 3 is definitely the first boss, Astellarn, which intimidates new solo players due to its nearly constant damage output and many ways to die almost instantly. The first tip I would definitely give to beginners for all 3 bosses is zoom in a little bit during the boss fights, Astellarn in particular, until you're able to identify each mechanic and animation better. First, let's talk about the gear you're going to need for the dungeon. Invention is definitely recommended, even if you can't afford the best perks. The 3 perks that I would definitely recommend going for ED2, one of which is less important, are Dragon Slayer, Enhanced Devotion 3, and Mobile, with Mobile being the least important. It's just helpful for navigating the dungeon in between the boss fights. And boss number 2, Verak Lith. Dragon Slayer increases your damage by 7% against all dragons, which works against the bosses in the dungeon, but Invention isn't required, it just helps, as it does with everything. Now, let's talk about what you'll want to wear for the dungeon to make it semi-efficient. I recommend at least tier 70 power armor and armadillo at minimum, and at least tier 85 weapons for accuracy. Trust me when I tell you that accuracy is important against the bosses in ED2. I did my first 4 solo kills with a Zerite bow and armadillo armor, and it was awful. You use so much food, and the kills take forever. I recommend either wearing a defense cape or something similar with the defense cape perk on it. If you don't have 99 defense, then you'll definitely want to wear a sign of life during the boss fights, just in case you're almost done the boss fight and you happen to die. And I would highly recommend a Ring of Death if you can afford it, but if not, then you should be using Luck of the Dwarves at minimum. It's also wise to bring a shield if you're dual wielding, or a shield bow if you're using a 2-handed weapon. If you can afford the upgrade to Cinderbane gloves or Nightmare gauntlets, then I would definitely recommend doing so. I would also recommend using at least tier 95 curses, as I'm not sure Rigor would be enough with minimum gear in a solo. For auras, I would recommend using Penance, Vampirism, or Reckless. However, if you're using tier 80 weapons, then I would definitely recommend you use Sharpshooter for the extra accuracy against the bosses. Some things that are recommended but not really required are Vengeance, Disruption Shield, and Enhanced Excalibur. Vengeance can be used to reflect damage, Disruption Shield to negate, and Enhanced Excalibur to heal. The bosses can hit fairly high through prayer, which makes Vengeance useful, and also leads me to the abilities that you will want to use to help negate some of the damage during the boss fights. I would say it's required to have Devotion, as the bosses can all hit upwards of 3.5k through prayer and have fairly high accuracy. Sacrifice will also help if all of your other basic abilities are on cooldown to help regain a minor amount of health. You'll also want to be using Anticipation and Debilitate whenever you can, but try not to overlap them with Devotion, as it's a waste except during rare parts of Verak Lith and the Blackstone Dragon. But if you can flick your prayers fast enough, you'll be perfectly fine. Heading into the boss fights, you're going to want to make sure that you have your thresholds up and that you have enough adrenaline to use them. If you aren't, then you're going to want to stall and wait for them to be up, because it will help the kill speed quite a bit. Now, when it comes to Astellarn, you're definitely going to want to keep rapid fire up for the Pulsar, which is the first mechanic of Astellarn, and I'll explain more about that shortly. Astellarn can attack with 3 combat styles when in melee range, but will only use magic attacks otherwise. Defensive abilities are pretty much required unless you want to be eating the whole fight and reducing your adrenaline. And probably the easiest thing to forget about while dealing with the other mechanics is to use your defensive abilities. The first mechanic of Astellarn is Pulsars, which will spawn periodically throughout the fight, approximately every minute and a half or so. The first one will spawn approximately 3 attacks after the beginning of the fight, and they have 20,000 HP. That's why you're going to want to keep rapid fire up, if not a second threshold, if you're not using at least tier 90 weapons. Wormholes are the second mechanic of Astellarn and come in 2 pieces, the Black Hole and the Neutron Star. The Black Hole comes first, and you'll be notified with a notification bubble above your character, followed by a little blue timer underneath your adrenaline bar, counting down until the Black Hole spawns. Now, you're going to want to pull the Neutron Star into the Black Hole by standing on the opposite side of the Black Hole as the Neutron Star. or else the neutron star will blow up and kill you, and you don't want to stand on the black hole, as it does 500 damage per tick on the outer tiles and 2500 per tick on the center tile. Now I know that I just said that the neutron star will kill you, but that's not true. It will do 5000 damage if it explodes on you, but there's a good chance that it will kill you with overlapping damage from other mechanics throughout the fight, whether that's the Celestial Rain or just the non-stop barrage of magic attacks and a possible pulsar. And then, as I just mentioned, the last mechanic is Celestial Rain, which is a meteor shower in one quadrant of the room at a time. So that's northwest, northeast, southwest, or southeast quadrants, which makes it fairly easy to deal with. Unless you mess up your wormhole, putting it inside of a whole quadrant, which you definitely don't want to do. Which leads me to the next part that I want to talk about. Placement of your wormholes. I'm totally going to rip off the wiki picture here so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about without me making a crudely drawn diagram in paint. So, as you can see with the red grid, you want to try to stand on one of those lines at all time. And then when the wormhole spawns on you as a black hole, you're going to want to keep it placed there and then step off and then have the neutron star be pulled in. This way, if Celestial Rain is on top of your wormhole, it doesn't cover the whole wormhole, which prevents you from doing damage. Celestial Rain will do more damage the longer you stand in it, so you want to be in it for as little as possible, and using defensives with at least deflect or anticipation. You do not want to use resonance during this stage, as I accidentally found out myself a few times, because it will heal off of the rain if you time it wrong, and because the rain can be anywhere between 50 and 550 damage, you don't know if that's going to be the hit that you heal on or if it's going to be an attack from the boss, so do not use resonance when you're under the rain. Now, the pulsar mechanic is pretty straightforward. Just kill the pulsar or it will do damage to you throughout the whole fight that it is alive, and it will not despawn until the next one spawns. So you want to get rid of it as fast as possible because it has 100% accuracy and will hit you no matter where you are in the room. The second mechanic being the black hole. How I deal with it is once it spawns, I will step past the outer square. I'll turn around and face towards the black hole so that I can surge if the neutron star is behind me, or stand still and do minimum DPS while I wait for the neutron star on the other side of the hole to be attracted into the hole to turn into the wormhole. If the first neutron star that spawns explodes on you, it's highly recommended to teleport, as you substantially slow down your kill by at least a minute and a half waiting for the next black hole to spawn. Now, Astellarn is basically the only boss in Elite Dungeon 2 that requires food. So if you're messing up mechanics and causing your kill times to be longer, you're going to be taking a lot more damage throughout the fight, even with defensive abilities. The cycle of mechanics will proceed throughout the fight, and it will go pulsar, black hole, neutron, so be prepared while you're fighting your pulsar if you don't DPS it down right away. The black hole will spawn, so you're going to want to reposition yourself, even if the pulsar is still hitting you, so that not all of your wormhole is in one quadrant, because that will hurt you. To clarify, because I don't think I mentioned it, once you've turned your black hole into the wormhole, you're going to want to stand on the wormhole. That's why you don't want it in one quadrant, you want it on the line. If you're not standing on the wormhole, then your damage will be capped at something ridiculously low like 10%. So that will also slow down your kill quite a bit if you don't stand on the wormhole after you've popped it. Now let's head into the fight. You're going to want to finish clearing the room right before the boss. Make sure to toggle your chest so that you can get double loot from the boss, and then head on in. Make sure that your overloads are up and that your super prayer renewal is up so that it doesn't expire mid-boss fight. I like to start the boss fight by dashing to the other side and opening up with tendrils followed by snapshot. After approximately 3 attacks from the boss, the pulsar will spawn, and if you still have a threshold up, rapid fire is the best to use. Use that on pulsar right now and DPS that down. If you're unable to DPS the pulsar down fast enough, then you're going to have to be prepared to reposition yourself so that you can place the black hole on the center line of the wall. You're also going to want to make sure that you're in a position that the neutron star doesn't kill you while you finish off killing the pulsar. If the neutron star will kill you, then you're going to need to dash to the other side of the black hole and wait for the neutron star to hit the black hole and turn into a wormhole, just like I've done here. Once your black hole and neutron star have neutralized each other into a wormhole, step back onto the wormhole and finish off the pulsar if need be. If the pulsar is already dead, then DPS the boss as much as you can until the next pulsar and black hole phasing. Once you hit 200,000 HP, you will trigger the Celestial Rain threshold. This is where the Celestial Rain will now rain in one quarter of the room at a time. During this phase, you're going to want to use Devotion and Anticipation whenever you can without overlapping, so that you're taking as little damage as possible while doing as much damage as possible. If you're unable to DPS the boss down during the first wormhole phase, then the phase cycle will continue, and another black hole will spawn every 80 seconds, followed by its accompanying neutron star and another pulsar. Be sure to use Vengeance and defensive abilities whenever you are able to in order to return and negate as much damage as possible. Occasionally, you will get lucky, as you see here, with my neutron star spawning instantly inside the black hole, turning it into a wormhole. Once the boss reaches around 20,000 health, you'll want to switch your ring to a Luck of the Dwarves if you've got one and are currently wearing something else. Assuming you've been able to follow and replicate my steps fairly accurately, you should be nearly done the kill, so be prepared to switch your rings. If you manage to get Astellarn below 30k health by the time the next pulsar spawns, it's best to just tank it and finish off Astellarn, then doing the extra 20k damage to the pulsar and then Astellarn. Repeat the steps as necessary until Astellarn is killed, and then proceed through the dungeon to the next boss. But be sure to remember to toggle your chest to pick up your loot from mobs again. Once you've cleared the next section of the dungeon, it's time to head on over the bridge and face Verak Lith, who's basically just a more powerful King Black Dragon with mechanics. He's relatively easy to kill, you just need to learn to identify certain parts of his attacks and get a feel for the timing. He also offers 2 ways to heal with resonance depending on which way you're more comfortable with. Verak Lith has 4 mechanics to deal with after every 4 auto attacks. He will auto attack with melee in melee range and magic at a distance, so you don't have to worry about protecting range here at all. Disruption Shield is useful to negate his second ability after his spires, but I don't have it, so I'll only be able to point out where you can use it if you have it. It's time to learn his abilities. His first ability is his ability to erect a spire at your location. This spire can be dealt with in one of 2 ways efficiently. The first is to switch your prayer and pop Devotion. You'll want to be protecting melee from the spire, and then switch back to magic immediately afterwards. The second way to deal with this mechanic is to use your shield switch and to use resonance and heal. It's pretty easy to put your shield on and switch in time, as you're notified both with a message above your character and your screen will shake. Don't worry though, only 1 spire will spawn per player, so you won't have to worry about scrambling around to try and clear 2 to 3 spires while you're alone. His spires will have 15,000 health and can be taken care of pretty easily with rapid fire. Do not use Vengeance during this phase, as damage will not be reflected onto the boss as he's protected from damage while his spires are up. His next ability has 3 different possibilities of which version will come out, and they are Ice, Poison, and Shock. Now, Shock and Ice look very similar if you're new to the boss, So this is one of those attacks that you want to look closer if you're not reading the little chat pop-up above your character. The pop-up will occur both when the attack is launched and when you absorb it with your character. You can absorb it by standing on the little green arrows that are on the floor. The arrows aren't too bright though, so they may be hard to see through the boss. So this mechanic can be dealt with in one of a few ways. The first way is Disruption Shield. Use your Disruption Shield right before the attack is about to hit the floor, and you will negate 4,000 damage. If you didn't use Resonance to deal with the Spire earlier, then the second way to deal with this mechanic is to equip your shield and pop Resonance for a free heal of 4,000. The third way to deal with this mechanic is the intended way to deal with it, and that is you go to the green arrows on the floor, you pick up the attack, and you go to an opposite egg of what you picked up. Some people will say go counterclockwise of the attack you picked up, but some will say go clockwise. It doesn't really matter. If you get poison, go to ice and shock. If you get ice, go to shock and poison. And if you get shock, go to ice and poison. The way you disperse of the attack is by clicking investigate on the egg, and then it will discharge. However, if you're not able to disperse the energy in time, be prepared to tank at least 10,000 damage. His third ability is a dive bomb attack, or B-52 as I call it. This attack is easy to dodge as the delay from when the dragon flies by and when the attack hits the ground is actually quite a bit. The easiest way to deal with this is to dive out of the way with surge or escape as soon as the dragon has started flying by. If for some reason you're unable to get out of the way, it will not do a lot of damage, so it is easy to tank this ability. Now his fourth and final ability is a Tornado Cluster, and it's very similar to a counterpart from the next boss, the Blackstone Dragon. This ability targets your location, and you have about a second or two to move before the fireball splits into a bunch of tornadoes and does a lot of damage. It's also fairly easy to recognize as it moves slower and is much bigger than his normal auto attack. Do not stand on this attack unless you want to respawn. After this ability, he will now repeat the cycle. Just as you would with other monsters, switch your ring right before they're about to die if you have a ring switch. Once Verak Lith is dead and you've collected your loot, be sure to toggle your chest to pick up drops again, and then teleport to the fourth option on the list. After you've cleared the next stage, the next boss you will encounter is the Blackstone Dragon, who also happens to be a Gemstone Dragon, so if you're on a Gemstone Dragon task, bring your Slayer Helm for this boss. Once you're ready, walk over the bridge and prepare to fight Verak Lith, the second boss in the dungeon. Use Anticipation right before the fight if you don't plan on using Devotion right away. I like to start the fight off with Tendrils, followed by Rapid Fire and Bombardment, saving Snapshot for the Spire and flicking between Soul Split and Protect Magic. Once the notification for the Spire appears, prepare your Shield Switch and Resonance. Now take care of the Spire as fast as possible, and then continue DPSing Verak Lith. Be prepared for his upcoming Ricochet attack, and be ready to read the message above your character, and look for the green arrows on the floor. Once you've identified and picked up the attack, proceed to an egg opposite of it. Next, prepare for yet another Spire with your Shield Switch and Resonance. Take care of that Spire as fast as you can, and be prepared for his B-52 attack and 4 attacks. Yet another Spire will be spawning, so prepare your Shield Switch and Resonance. Once you've taken care of that Spire, there will be yet another Ricochet attack, so be prepared to use your Disruption Shield or pick up the attack and take it to an egg to neutralize. Once you've cleared that Spire, be prepared for the Fire Tornado attack, which will be a slower, bigger projectile than his normal attack. Once that happens, be ready to dodge out of the way, and then continue doing damage. This is the end of the cycle, and it will now repeat throughout the fight until you manage to kill Verak Lith. The third and final boss of ED2 is the Blackstone Dragon. Now the Blackstone Dragon is pretty easy, but it's also pretty easy to die at for beginners. You will want to make sure that you're healthy going into this fight and be sure to check your overloads and prayer renewals. Once you've made sure everything is good to go and you've cleared out the gemstone dragons to unlock the boss room, it's time to toggle your chest to get a chance at that sweet, sweet double barge. The Blackstone Dragon has 3 phases, can attack with all 3 combat styles, and shares some mechanics between phases. Phase 1 isn't that hard, but can quickly become overwhelming for newer players because of the ability to use all 3 combat styles. If you get too far out of range of the Blackstone Dragon, she will teleport to you within melee range, so be careful of how much distance you put between yourself and the boss. On top of being able to use all 3 attack styles, during Phase 1, she will alternate abilities after every 3 and 2 auto attacks respectively. The alternating attacks are slow-moving spikes similar to that of the Gemstone Dragons, and a Dragon Breath attack similar to Astellarn's massive AoE Dragon Breath. During this phase, and Phase 3, you should be ready to flick your prayers at any time due to the ability to use all 3 styles. If the Blackstone Dragon is coming into melee range or is already in melee range, I'd recommend protecting melee and flicking to magic or ranged, as those attacks are much easier to spot and move slower than her melee attacks. This cycle will repeat until 520,000 health, where the Blackstone Dragon will become caged in the center of the room, surrounded by 4 black hands which periodically attack with magic, followed by hands on the floor targeting your location immediately afterwards. During this time, you cannot damage the boss until the hands are destroyed. The black hands can be taken care of safely by being prepared to move every 15 seconds or so. It's not recommended to stand in the middle of the hands, as the more you are in range of, the more chances you have to die from hands on the floor, and the more damage you will take from their magic attacks. Because of this, it's best to stay on the outer edge of one hand at a time without crossing a center line in the room. Once all 4 hands have been cleared in any order that you'd like, you are now free to damage the boss again and are now in Phase 3, which will have abilities after every 3 auto attacks. The abilities are in a cycle, as with all bosses in this dungeon, and are easily dealt with by either dodging or the use of devotion. This phase has one special mechanic that will happen only once, and this occurs at 260,000 health. It is advised not to stand still during this phase, and you should be stalling your adrenaline while making sure to stay out of range of the Blackstone Dragon. If you happen to stand still and are within range of the boss, she will fire out a white fire attack along the ground towards you. You will want to avoid standing on this, as it will nearly one-shot you, taking less than 3 seconds to deal 13,500 health. The attack will spread as long as you are in range of it or the boss, so I'd recommend looking at your map to see her next landing location and moving to a safe spot away from her. After jumping around 7 times, and approximately 1 minute in total, she will scream "Show me the light" and immediately start a spiral of flames. These flames are on a fixed path, but act similar to the ones I just explained. Standing on these, like the previous ones, will kill you very quickly, so you'll want to avoid standing on top of them, while remaining within range of the boss to do as much damage as you can. You can soul split during this phase, as she doesn't do much damage in return. Unlike the black hole from Astellarn, you are able to stand directly beside the white flames. You do not have to stand at least 1 square away. The next ability is the one that I mentioned earlier during the Verak Lith fight with the fire tornadoes. Instead of fire, these ones are black like her regular magic attacks. Usually she will turn and face another direction after a message in chat and above her head. If you are standing in the direction of the attack, you should reposition yourself as fast as you can before the attack bursts into a bunch of tornadoes. The third ability is the Dragon Breath attack from Phase 1, but is also accompanied with the spikes from the same phase. So you're going to want to be prepared to move once the attacks are launched. The spikes are fairly easy to avoid as they move pretty slowly, so you won't have to worry about switching your prayers off of magic. The fourth ability, and last in the pattern, is the black tornadoes from earlier, which signifies the end of the cycle. The cycle will repeat until you are able to kill the Blackstone Dragon, and be sure to remember your ring switch right before she is about to die. If all that seems intimidating, well don't worry, I'll explain what I'm doing during a kill. This boss can be dealt with pretty simply and without the need of food, as long as you're prepared to use your defense for healing whenever you need, and negating as much damage as possible. As long as she isn't in melee range, you should be able to flick your prayers fast enough to cut down on the damage you will receive. Once you're ready, head on into the boss room and prepare for the final fight of the dungeon. Be sure to keep your distance at all times, kiting the boss around the room if need be, and be prepared to switch your prayers at any moment due to the ability to use all 3 attack styles. Keep kiting the boss around the dungeon, and be sure to dodge the spike attacks whenever necessary. Once you've gotten the boss low enough and you've reached the black hand stage, be sure to be in range of only one black hand at a time so you're not taking any unnecessary damage. Proceed to kill the first hand and then move on to the second. Once you've killed that hand, move on to the third. Once that hand has fallen, be prepared to move on to the fourth and final hand. Be sure to keep some thresholds or ultimate abilities up for when the boss is able to be attacked once the hand has fallen. Now that the hands have fallen, I like to continue the boss with a threshold and be prepared to kite and prey switch whenever need be. Once the spiral flame attack has started, be sure to get out of the way and do as much damage as you can during this phase. Be sure to soul split, as the Blackstone Dragon doesn't do that much damage this phase unless you stand on the flames. Once the spiral of flames has reached the Blackstone Dragon will be able to attack again, so be careful and be ready to switch your prey at a moment's notice. Next, you're going to want to make sure that you're ready to get out of the way of the black tornadoes. Once you see this attack launch through the air, be sure to surge or escape out of the way, and then go back to damaging the boss. Now that the Blackstone Dragon has reached her threshold of 260,000 health, she will start jumping around the room 7 times or approximately 1 minute. Be sure to stay out of the way of the dragon and keep your adrenaline up as long as you can. Use defensive as you see needed to build up adrenaline during this phase. Once she has landed and screams "Show me the light," be prepared to step into range of the boss to do damage during her spiral flame attack. But be careful of any other previous flames from her jumping around, as they will continue to spread if you are still in range of them, and they can go underneath her flaming spiral, so you won't be able to tell exactly where they are if they are underneath. Be prepared to dodge yet another black tornado if she shoots it in your direction. As soon as you see her Dragon Breath attack, be sure to get out of the way as fast as you can so that you're not hit by her spikes. Once you've reached this point in the cycle, it will now repeat, starting with another flaming spiral. Be sure to use Devotion and Anticipation whenever needed, and be sure to use your shield switch and Resonance whenever you need a little extra health. Once you've managed to get the Blackstone Dragon low, be sure to switch your ring before she dies. If you've made it this far and managed to replicate my steps or better, then congratulations on completing Elite Dungeon 2 Dragonkin Laboratory alone. Be sure to share your results with me and let me know if this helped you.